1. Get the job. It's been a while now, but I sort of remember when the knowledge hit me. Man, you should probably be thinking about getting a job. Insane. Ridiculous to think that anyone could make it through college without having to think about that. Do what interests you. Just another victim of the big millennial lie. It was the last week of June 2014, and I was the fresh recipient of a Bachelor of the Arts in a field that online posters of a certain infamous message board referred to as shit tier. Most days, I sat on the couch in my cockroach-infested apartment with my struggling HP laptop browsing job postings. It was just me, late 2000s B movies, and Enemy of the State, starring Will Smith, 2 more months of rent, and The Void. Love The Void. The void of online is infinite. Each submitted job application slowly turning end over end like a satellite tumbling through space, never to be seen again unless hesitantly probed by the alien fingers of some HR manager in Alpha Centauri, containing a gold record that when played reveals Randall, BA in Sociology and Anthropology from Regional Liberal Arts College. Prior work experience, begging alumni to donate money for $5 Amazon gift card incentives. Grader at Kumon. It had been a couple weeks of only leaving my house to go 1 block to the grocery store. Capitalist respectability politics demands that you not experience any type of enjoyment, only a vague sense of impending doom when unemployed. Then I saw the ad. Join one of Regional Abbreviation's fastest growing companies. The job is seeking candidates to work as call specialists in our call center. As the answering service trusted by 35% of the nation's funeral homes, the job has established a reputation for offering our clients the highest level of service. We are a true business partner to the funeral professionals we serve. Funeral homes? Does that mean no sales? A week earlier, I had slogged through some online training for a large health insurance company's call center until, despite their best efforts to conceal the truth, I realized the entire job was cold call sales. People, want to call funeral homes. Funeral homes offer a needed service. There can't be sales. What would you even try to sell? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Has anyone else in your family passed away recently? How bad could it be? 2. Got the job. 2 weeks later, Pittsburgh in the July heat. I'm sitting on the curb talking to this guy Ed from Cleveland. As we wait for the megabus back to the Midwest, I try not to laugh as his face and the wall behind him bend and shift slightly. We start talking about how the Cleveland Clinic wants to build a new light rail line into the city. They don't tell you that they're only going to build it in the nice neighborhoods. They only want it to help their employees get to work, Ed says. I respond by telling him I don't understand all the crackpot conspiracy theories going around these days. Big business and moneyed interests are already operating right before our eyes. That's the real conspiracy. Ed agrees, then leans in. Well, you know the greatest trick that's ever been pulled? Convincing people you don't exist. It's the devil, the Illuminati 666, Ed says. I stifle another laugh as shafts of non-existent light dance around my peripheral vision. All right, Ed. Ed changes the subject to how one time he tried to buy a hot dog for a homeless woman, but she didn't want it because it had pork and she's a Muslim, and well, he just thinks... You get the idea. The conversation just went downhill from there. The bus finally pulls up and I purposefully move away from him and sit in front of this guy on his way to Detroit. We make some small talk, then settle in for the last 5 hours of the ride as the bus drives head-on towards the sun. I have 1 week to go home and visit family before I start the job. 3. Start the job. I'm sorry for your loss, I say to a guy calling from Detroit when he references having recently lost his wife. He was calling in to follow up on his bill from a recent funeral. You need to rethink that. You need to rethink that. You need to rethink that, he yells. You lose your keys. You lose your wallet. You don't lose someone else. Okay, sure. I apologize, I say. I'll relay your message. Damn, that sucked. Over time, I would learn to simply say, "I'm so sorry to hear that," whenever a tragedy was related to me, in varying sympathetic tones, and keep the conversation rolling. Condolences has a Christian connotation, I was told, and can be offensive to someone of a different faith. And as I had just learned, expressing sorrow for a loss could be misinterpreted as an invitation to engage in spirited ontological debate. Being sorry, though, that's timeless. I'm the one that's sorry. I'm not saying anything about you. It's my sorrow, and you can't take it from me. Starting out at the job, they pair you with a more experienced call specialist. At first, for a couple days, they talk while you type out the messages that get sent out to the funeral directors. It's like when you're a kid and you only have one controller to split between you and your friend, so you try to play with one of you moving while the other aims and shoots, except with a sense of impending doom because you know what's coming. You're gonna have to talk to people. After all, that's what the job is really about. 4. Money never sleeps. The line they feed you at the job is this. If you're a funeral director, and a lot of them are small family operations, you have a couple choices about how you want to do your phones. Choice 1 is you can try to do it yourself and get calls at all hours of the day and night. And what if you're somewhere with bad service, or you're at a funeral itself and you gotta silence your phone? Or you're in bed and don't hear it ringing? Remember that 2010 movie, Wall Street 2, Money Never Sleeps? The one they put out after the financial crisis, the sequel to the one with Charlie Sheen that they put out after the previous big financial crisis in the late 80s? Me neither. Never watched it. Point being, money never sleeps for funeral directors either. Choice 2 is you directly hire an employee or employees to answer your phones 24/7. But that can get expensive, and some days and nights are slower than others, especially if you operate in a smaller town. Choice 3 is us. We do per call pricing, so you only have to pay for the calls we take for you. You can forward us your line whenever you feel like it and take it back over at any time. We triage all your calls for you and send you a text, call, email, and/or push notification depending on your preferred criteria. Tired of being constantly bothered about headstones? We take the message and you can check it at your convenience. Really want to know as soon as clergy contact you? We'll reach out right away. Oh, and most importantly, we'll make sure you never drop a death call. 5. Death calls. A death call is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the first call that you, one of your loved ones, or a medical professional or law enforcement officer make to a funeral home after someone dies. On the phone, maybe that means I get to hear your raw emotions after suffering the death of someone close to you. Maybe it means I hear a nurse calmly describing where the body is located and when it will be ready for pickup. A funeral director would hear that stuff too if they took your call personally, of course, but they also hear the faint ka-ching sound of a slot machine when it hits the jackpot and starts spilling coins onto the floor in the background, because death calls are the real money makers for them. The company line is that because families tend to use the same funeral homes, when you lose someone's business, you're not just losing their business, but their kid's business, their kid's business, their kid's kid's business, and so on and so forth. I think the line is that one missed business opportunity in reality is 7 missed opportunities, or something like that. So you get fired for dropping death calls. 6. Alter ego. I've been working at the job for 1 month now. That means my name has been misspelled as Randall for 1 month in the company system. I don't say anything to anyone and it will never be corrected. Eventually, I'll start joking to people that Randall is my new suave alter ego. It doesn't really matter because my supervisor constantly calls me Ronald in front of a giant sign that has my misspelled name demarking my cubicle for the shift. One day, my supervisor tells me that I made a mistake, accidentally telling a caller there would be a visitation instead of a memorial service. This infuriated the funeral director. All of our calls are recorded so funeral directors can go back and listen if they want to get more information, or in this case, to seek vengeance. 10 minutes later, I realized that when my supervisor was telling me about my mistake, she called me by the correct name and not Ronald, which I felt was kind of a letdown. It'll be the only time she calls me by the correct name before she dies a couple months later. We answer for the funeral home that handles her funeral arrangements, so we ended up taking her death call too. Small world. 7. The telephone game. On Monday, August 11th, 2014, Robin Williams hung himself. The next day, an office-wide bulletin went out reminding us that we were not to give out any information or speculate as to where or when his funeral services were being handled. They didn't explicitly say we were handling them, but why make that kind of statement unless you know something? On Wednesday, August 13th, 2014, my ex and one of my friends tried to convince me to get a new gig. I don't remember exactly why, but I can guess. When I tell most people about the job, the primary response I get is something along the lines of, "Wow, that must be hard talking to grieving families." And it is, but mostly because of things other than that. I'll set the scene. You have a bunch of people calling a funeral home who aren't stupid, for the most part. People in America these days are pretty good at picking up on when they're being call screened. They don't like it. It feels impersonal. So when they figure out that you're not an employee of the funeral home, they very naturally want to immediately hang up on you. But get this, if someone hangs up on you for whatever reason, and it's later discovered it was a death call that went to another funeral home, you're fired. Because of this, every call, "I'll just call back later, jerk off," is a death call until it's proven otherwise. It puts you on edge constantly. They drill you about seemingly innocuous calls where it turned out that somebody died. In a way, it's sort of fitting. Every call could be your last. At first, the thought is kind of stressful. Every hang-up sends a cold shot of adrenaline rushing through my body. Eventually, I learned to just blurt, "Has someone just passed away?" in a sort of vaguely concerned newscaster deadpan right before getting hung up on. Can't blame me if someone refuses to answer the question, no matter how inappropriate and unhinged it seems at that point in the conversation. Am I right, folks? 8. Get to the job. In September of 2014, I moved from my shared bedroom into a windowless 8x9 closet in Chinatown. I would fill up 2 duffel bags and a backpack full of my shit, walk the 2.5 blocks to the subway and take it to 11th Street, walk the 5 long blocks north to my new apartment, walk up 2 flights of stairs, drop all my stuff off, go back, and repeat for the rest of the week. In the end, my friend and new roommate Chris helped me bring the rest of my stuff over, but he had to make another trip and his girlfriend had the key, so we just dumped all my stuff on the sidewalk, and I stood and waited by it for 15 to 30 minutes while he went and got it. I took a picture and posted it on Twitter captioned, "Everything I own on the sidewalk in Philadelphia." From that point on, weekdays at 5:45 a.m. and on Sundays at 5:30 a.m., I would get up, walk to the L, take it to 69th Street Station, transfer to the 101 toward Media, or the 109 bus on Sundays, and walk the rest of the way to the unassuming office building housing the job. Eventually, I got the timing down to always sleep until just before my stop. As the summer months faded into winter, my mornings turned dark. On trash day, trudging the 5 blocks south towards Market Street through Chinatown, the air took on a sickly sweet smell. Not quite rotten, but definitely fish-related. One Sunday, after swiping through the subway turnstile, I walked over to my normal waiting spot past some guy and his friend, the only 2 other people on the platform this early. "Hey man, nice boots. Where'd you get 'em?" "Thanks, LL Bean. I'm made to keep walking." "Listen man, you gotta be careful out here. I turn 30 next week." "Congratulations?" "No, you're not hearing me. I'm about to be 30. I've been around. I've seen some shit. Seen people get jumped, shot, stabbed. I saw you pull your wallet out to get in here, and now I know where it's at. You can't move like that around here." "All right, sure, thanks." I walked away and waited till the subway came. I remember one of my old roommates telling me why he doesn't wear any clothing with objects, words, or other representational symbols on it. It invites conversation. So I just take my card out when I go to get on the subway now. Wallets invite conversation. 9. If you can get to the Kentucky Fried Chicken, you can get to the funeral home. On Tuesday, September 16th, 2014, at or around 5 p.m., the 7-Eleven cashier says, "You must get all the girls, huh?" to me as I purchase a $1 bag of Fritos flavor twists. I think he meant that at that moment in time, coming back from work, wearing a tucked-in polo and chinos, I had 0 drip. I didn't ask, and I'll never know for sure. See, sometimes in life, you don't always have the information you need in a given situation. Like when I asked a grown man, "What is your telephone number, please?" prompting him to lean away from the phone and yell, "Mom, what's my telephone number?" That's called utilizing the resources available to you to problem solve. That's a growth mindset, baby. And I try to help people maintain that mindset. Like when I'm at the job and the account I'm on says to tell callers looking for the funeral home to follow the signs and they ask me, "What did the sign say?" I have no idea, buddy. Just follow the signs. Usually, accounts will have canned directions for us to regurgitate the callers that fall apart after the first question. We don't get access to any kind of maps. I don't know why, and I never asked. The funeral home is next to the KFC. If you can get to the KFC, you can get to the funeral home. Sorry, but I don't know how to get to the KFC. I'm just with the answering service. Another good one is when people call trying to get directions to the funeral home and ask questions about what it looks like. Is it the red brick building with the green shutters? I have no idea, buddy. Neither of us has ever been there before. I tried to call a funeral director last month to tell him this guy was outside for a viewing, and after I got through his 45-second long psych rock ringback tone, he laughed hysterically, said, "That was hours ago," and hung up. I've learned that funeral directors aren't the most interested people when it comes to holding your hand step by step to get you to your second cousin's wife's celebration of life. That was kind of on you. So you know how to get to the KFC. You know how to get to the funeral home. Good for you. You're outside? Cool. I'm not inside. I'm in a call center possibly hundreds of miles away from you, surrounded by people with extremely noticeable local regional accents and a marked lack of empathy. This sucks for both of us, I know. Tell me your name, phone number, and why you're out there, and I'll shoot your message into the void. Maybe someone will be with you, eventually. Unless you're right outside the funeral home trying to report a death. That's the worst. Hearing the dawning realization in someone's voice that something is terribly, terribly wrong as I take them through the mind-numbing questions of the death template instead of just getting someone to come open the door is heartbreaking at first and mildly annoying subsequently. But hey, it comes with the job. 10. Nice guys don't come to work. It's Casual Friday in late September. My boss, Rich, a mid-40s white man with a high and tight fade and a genteel southern accent, is wearing a white tee with a chain over it tucked into plaid cargo shorts. This is the man who decides whether my coworkers and I lose our jobs or not on a daily basis. Cool. Last month, after killing a wasp, he started cheering wildly and fist-pumping. Our bosses and supervisors get access to the internet. They mostly use it for online shopping and goofing off. We don't, because they don't trust us. Once you've worked at the job for 6 months, they let you listen to a digital radio with slightly worse selection than an early Grand Theft Auto game. Every time you get a call, it cuts off. If you're lucky, depending on your shift, the call volume will be slow and you might get to listen to a whole song. Rich turns to a supervisor and gestures to the front page of yahoo.com. Joan Rivers has been hospitalized, and ISIS has laid siege to Kobani under fierce U.S. airstrikes. Which do you think is more important? Rich says. Joan Rivers in the hospital or ISIS? The supervisor gasps. Joan Rivers is in the hospital? Hell yeah. I fucking love this shit. Later that day, I hear them discussing how one of my coworkers was recently terminating for calling out. He was the nicest guy, a supervisor says. Nice guys don't come to work, Rich responds. 11. Nice guys do come to work. There's a lot of turnover at the job. It's partially due to the nature of the work and partially due to the incredibly strict attendance policy, which penalizes you for clocking in even a second late and makes weekend and holiday shifts mandatory. Occasionally, announcements would come over the company message board system stating simply, "Employee name is no longer employed at the job." Their initials would get taken off the schedule, and no one would talk about them again, except possibly to gossip if they had firsthand knowledge about what happened. I hit it off with this new guy named Mike, who seemed like a pretty normal, funny guy from Jersey. He liked comics, and he lent me his copy of Priest one time. One day, I came in and Mike was scheduled, but wasn't there. After a couple days of this, I asked my coworker what was up. Apparently, the New Jersey Fugitive Task Force caught wind that Mike was working in Pennsylvania. Completely suited up and armed with long guns, they came up to the glass doors of the job and rang the doorbell. After talking with them through the intercom, My supervisor went up to Mike and told him, either you can go down here or we're going to let them up here. He went down there. They kept Mike's initials on the schedule for a month before removing it. A ghostly reminder of the death of his employment there. Or maybe they thought he'd come back. I never really found out why they were looking for him anyway. Someone said he had a drug-related federal warrant, but who knows? I never saw him again. Good thing I gave him his comic book back before that. He was a nice guy, but nice guys don't come to work. 12. Bingo. In order to make up for the constant walkouts and firings, the job is constantly hiring. In order to work there, you have to be able to type faster than 35 words per minute. That's it. It's actually possible to do this by using the tried and true boomer typing method where you only use the index finger of each hand to strike the keys. I know because I used to sit next to the station where they had people take the test, so I got to witness the triumph of their victories and the agony of their defeats. To make up for this less than blistering standard, the primary message-taking interface for the job provides a helpful grid with a letter on one axis and a number on the other that when typed produces a text shortcut for common funeral home scenarios. E4 expands into caller is looking for flowers and so forth. In theory, this is intended to help you get down the message as fast as possible, because once the call disconnects, you will have less than 5 seconds to finish your message before you're immediately kicked on to the next one, and if this happens too many times, you'll get fired. What this means in practice is that the person calling you in potentially one of the most emotionally vulnerable situations in their life is usually speaking with someone who is confused as hell because they are trying to talk and play bingo at the same time. 13. Laugh now, cry later. I tell people when I talk about the job now that I learned to deal with compassion fatigue in a very specific way. If someone is calling me to report a death, especially a grieving family member, they want the funeral home to come get their loved one. Full stop. That's it. And if the person on the phone with them doesn't repeatedly try to confirm that their name is spelled Shirley, Sherrly, that's just a bonus. Me crying on the phone with them for 10 minutes doesn't help with that. Not that sometimes I didn't want to. I don't even remember a lot of the bad death calls. I don't want to remember them. To me, there was not a single noble or redeeming quality to being voyeuristically forced into some of the worst moments of people's lives that were also recorded and kept on file for quality assurance purposes by the job. When I talk about it to people, I do a sort of verbal hand waving and say, it's not like I didn't have some calls I'll never forget for the rest of my life, but the majority of them weren't like that. Laugh now, cry later, you know? But honestly, there's only one of those calls I do remember. I don't talk about it. She was so cold. He found his daughter in the closet after she hung herself. He cut her down, but by then it was too late. She was so cold. I touched the back of her neck, and she was cold. It's not the crying or the sobbing or anything else that I remember. It was the simple observation of an utterly broken man. She was just so cold. 14. Cold. You're a dumbass. This is why you take my calls, a funeral director yells at me before hanging up angrily. I'm not really sure what point he was trying to prove there. I mean, personally, I would want the qualifying attributes of someone answering my calls to be based in competency and not the opposite. It's been a long winter. Beginning in early October, one of my coworkers on the verge of being fired for poor attendance started asking me to cover the last 3.5 hours of her shift. After I agreed a couple times, she started asking me every day, providing varying reasons why she needed help, and by extension, why I should work 12-hour shifts every day. The period from 4 to 7 p.m. is typically the busiest for funeral homes because you're fielding calls from everyone getting off work in addition to the usual ones. Funeral directors are also wrapping things up for the night and calling in to switch over their lines, further boosting the call volume. I took her hours for a month or so before I broke and started making excuses for why I couldn't that were just as ridiculous as the one she gave me. I live in a closet. I don't need this shit. It is consistently cold in the office. The air conditioning is on despite it being consistently below freezing outside. After numerous complaints, management issues a staff-wide bulletin stating that they will not turn off the AC because they needed to keep the computers and servers from overheating. I reply and suggest that they just open all of the windows instead, since it's basically the same thing. Management insanely considers my request, but rebuffs it due to the possibility of noise pollution coming in from the road. It's going to be a long winter. 15. Neither snow, nor rain, nor job security. The winter of 14 had a fair amount of freezing rain, and trust me when I say that SEPTA, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, doesn't need any excuse not to deliver, let alone a good one. And don't get me wrong, I love public transportation. I tell people if I wanted to get jostled around in a crowded space with strangers while listening to music, I'd skip the house show and just go ride the bus instead. But like I said, money never sleeps. Money can't be late to work either, or call out, or it gets fired. When a big storm is forecasted, the job offers employees a $50 incentive to sleep on the floor in a basement overnight, which adds up to $39 after taxes. $39 for sleeping on the floor is pretty good if you ask me. If I got $39 for every time I slept on the floor, I would be like a 10,000-aire easy. But I've only ever gotten it once, and it sucked. After that, I started staying over at my partner's college dorm more and more because it was closer to my work and meant I could sleep in for an extra hour before walking through the woods to the nearest trolley stop. Usually, while waiting for the trolley, I would just kind of stare with my eyes unfocused down the tracks, past the wall where someone had written, "All hail the Wizard King." I could also get my partner to swipe me into the cafeteria and get a free dinner in addition to grabbing breakfast and lunch for the next day. I would sleep on a fold-out futon chair thing underneath their lofted bed with a blanket hanging down because technically I wasn't supposed to be there, and sneak to and from the showers, appropriating measures of liquid soap from the undergrads who left their hygiene products out. Getting free meals and paying less than $200 a month in rent from living in a closet was pretty much the only reason I was able to still make money during this period when my student loan payments started to hit. 16. Hazmat. After 6 months at the job, they put you on the phone lines for a biohazard cleanup company. It's the company you call when someone blows their brains out or gets hit by a train or something. I learned a lot of people shoot themselves in their cars. Word to the wise, get out first. It will save your family thousands of dollars or the price and utility they would have gotten out of your car without having to replace the majority of the interior. They handle a lot of stuff for police departments as well. Having a gruff policeman with a Boston accent try to clinically report, "We have a situation here in the patrol car, the feces," for a first time is always kind of funny because you can professionally respond and be like, "Ah, yes, the feces. We'll get you right over to a specialist, sir." Taking those calls was pretty chill. The person's body has already been taken care of. We probably took the call for that too. So there's no rush. Emotions don't run high. People are less cagey about talking to you, and if they are, they usually start talking when asked the wonderfully euphemistic question, "What is the situation?" "Well, sir, I'll tell you what, the situation is that she just exploded with blood and fecal matter everywhere." Wow. We got a situation. My sister was a hoarder, and by the time we got the place cleaned up, we found out that she'd been defecating in paint buckets in the house for 6 months, and well, we thought things were better, but we found her dead in her house last week, and she'd been defecating in paint buckets for over a year this time. Oh yeah, definitely a situation. Situation material. Probably the coolest thing about answering for the hazmat company was that I figured out this way that I could use part of their website to go online. The job took away the URL bar, but didn't realize that there were some news profiles of the company embedded in one of the informational pages. So you could just click over to that and get onto the Huffington Post and read the news for like 5 seconds to a minute before another call came in. It's the small victories. 17. There is a moose in the cemetery. Can you please call the police? The moose has been in the cemetery for 30 minutes. It is getting angry. People are becoming scared. There was a rabbit outside that got hit by a car, and it's still alive and dragged itself to the side of the road. and now it's being attacked by crows. Can someone please come outside and get it? Caller states that Rabbit was hit by car outside the funeral home and is being attacked by crows. Can you come outside? 18. Not a morning person. Most mornings, I rode the trolley with this older guy, mid-50s probably, who I first noticed because I'm like 75% sure he was reading Harry Potter or Harry Potter fan fiction on his Kindle one time. I ran into him waiting to get back to the city, and he told me that earlier in the week, the sidewalk was too icy for him to walk up it, so he just turned around and went back home, which honestly sounds so sick. To just get almost all the way to work, but then decide it's too hard and leave and not get fired. That seems ideal. Sorry, boss, couldn't make it in today. Safety first, you know? Every week after that, he would laboriously put on rubber overshoe crampons a couple stops before getting off, then totter up the street, scraping as he went. It's usually the same cast on the way to work. Me, Harry Potter fan fiction guy, my coworker Amy, and a few others. Occasionally, you'll get a cameo, a one-hit wonder, like the guy who sat in front of me once, fastidiously reading the WikiHow page on how to hold your pee. Or the guy who started me awake by shouting, "Hey everyone, Big Daddy's here," as he got on, then proceeded to fall asleep holding his drink. The straw stayed in his mouth as his head lolled back, dripping slowly onto his shirt. Seeing that just felt magical. I couldn't look away. 19. Groundhog Day. As winter blustered on, I reached a degree of comfort with the job. When you take enough calls and have your strategies in place, things tend to smooth out. When I first started, I would get a kick out of even the small things, like people getting their own names wrong. After months, I stopped even taking notes. Who cares? Even in death, a semblance of routine. The same telemarketers and scammers calling every day. The Comcast service technician who had his Juicy J ringtone go off in the middle of a call, then started laughing hysterically when I was able to recognize the strains of a zip and a double cup pouring through the phone line. The guy who spent 3 minutes trying to convince me that his phone number only had 9 digits by repeatedly saying, "Just look at your phone, bro." Or one man earnestly asking, "I was wondering if the funeral director would come and speak with our club about his experience with Taco Bell." Sure, must have been some experience. I hope he's okay. Of course, I'll relay the message. Or a woman with a shaky voice coming onto the line with her mind made up. "Hello, is this? I have a can of Cobo Valley Sloppy Joe sauce and I'd like a refund." If you got Sloppy Joe sauce from Ohio funerals and cremations, you deserve way more than a refund, lady, I'll tell you what. At this point, no matter what, I thought I was immune. Even so, there's always something to keep you on your toes. A man called about a memorial service for a friend who died in the Korean War and was being repatriated. He started oversharing about his life, which I enjoyed because it meant more time on the call with a known weirdo and less time spent on my shift with unknown and potentially angry weirdos. Then he decided to start dropping straight bombs. You know, I used to be in the Secret Service. I was with Kennedy on that day in Dallas. If you look up his speech in Fort Worth, I was the one in front wearing a white raincoat. I needed to ask. I wanted so badly to ask. I knew exactly how to phrase it. There was even a chance I wouldn't get fired for doing it, but I decided not to as my job and income flashed before my eyes. So, what's your take? Just when you thought you've heard it all, something new. 20. Waiting for Godot. When you're waiting for your shift to end, time takes on a mythical quality. The final push. Just a couple more calls and you're out of there. Then, sometimes, it happens. Bizarro mode. I'm sorry, did you say, "I'm not gonna repeat myself"? I'm not gonna repeat myself. Dude, you just did. You just did. You know, it's because of people like you that I had an aneurysm, and when I had my aneurysm, I was completely incapacitated, and my friends stole everything from me, so I call and call and call until I get a migraine, then I put a rubber band on my head. Sure, dude. Makes sense to me. After all that, who wouldn't? When I go to walk to the trolley to get back into the city, the final part puts me in the service road to the office complex connecting the back of all the parking lots. It's a weirdly liminal space, bordering the edge of the forest with almost no foot traffic. It truly feels like anything could happen there. I remember once seeing a Furby impaled on a fence post passing through. Normal shit. One afternoon, I saw a guy standing outside of his minivan, carefully placing an opened package of Chips Ahoy cookies on the curb. We made eye contact. I'm out here looking for my cat. Okay. Have you seen a black and white cat? No. Sorry. A few days later, I saw him sitting in his van in the same spot. No cookies this time. When he noticed me, he turned on his car and backed up real fast, crunching his bumper on the curb before he swerved away. I never saw him again. Normal job, normal world. 21. It's your funeral. In February of 2016, about a year after I finally managed to quit the job, I was standing in the parking lot of a funeral home in Ann Arbor, Michigan, as gusts of wind blew snow onto the ill-fitting peacoat I had found somewhere on the sidewalk years earlier. I specifically saved it for occasions like this. Weddings and funerals. This wasn't a wedding. My uncle came to the States after the war and landed a job as a professor at the University of Toledo. The story goes that he got an offer for a much better job in Montreal, but turned it down so he could sponsor my dad and other family members to come over. My dad met my mom in the Detroit area, so in a way, I guess I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. I owe you one, dude. During the family-only visitation, I got too in my head about the degree of grief versus emotional warmth I should show to my aunt and cousins, but that wasn't an issue during the next day service because I was sad as shit, crying most of the time and therefore doing me. Afterwards, I walked down the hallway to where the funeral directors, a group of 3 men and 1 woman, were standing talking amongst themselves in hushed voices. Thank you, I said, shaking hands with them. They gave me somber, professional condolences. The picture of professionalism. Until I told them I used to work for their answering service. Suddenly, the professional veneer dropped. The excited questions started flowing rapid fire. What was it like there? Did we sit in cubicles or all in one room? Did we use headsets? I happily obliged their questions. After all, it was just another normal job in a normal world.